Everybody. Thanks for having us on the stage here today. I'm a bit worried about my presentation. I've sat through 3 presentations now, and I don't have a single chart. I think I've got 2 numbers. I think there are 2 numbers. There's the number 10 and there's the number 3.45 somewhere. So I'm from the madhouse that put this down on your table. I saw a payslip. I'm not a payslip, a grocery bill a few months ago of 1994. And it just struck me when I saw what it cost. In 1994, you could have bought the whole house's groceries for a week for 130 Rand. And it just hit me and knew that's what we investment professionals are doing with our lives. That is what we're doing. And then I did a bit more arithmetic and realized that if a proverbial George, not this George, a much younger George, started working in 1994 and was probably 22 at that time, put his first contribution to his RA in 1994, he's still working, he still hasn't spent that money, which means that that money must have been invested so that it's increased tenfold, and he's still got another 10 years to work. It's quite a staggering responsibility. So if a basket of groceries goes up 10 times in 30 years, then you've only managed to match inflation. Now you haven't even enabled George to retire well. You've only managed to fight inflation. You've only managed to preserve buying power. So how do we do this? Well, we use equities, but that's not easy. Where's the actual presentation? But that's not easy because picking stocks is hard. From 1926 till 2022, only 3.4% of US stocks created all the wealth in the US. It's a staggering number. So we sit picking stocks all day. It's a very, very hard thing to do. I bet if you know someone who's made a lot of money on the stock market, they actually didn't make money on the stock market. They only probably own 1, 2, or 3 maybe companies that they held for a very long time. And it would be a Capitec or a Naspers or a Microsoft or Apple. That's how you make money on the stock market. It's not on the market. It's buying companies that have got some kind of a competitive advantage on a strong growth vector, and you keep it. So how do we do this? We think that 3 truths, absolute truths in markets, and they're timeless, and we try and harness them. The first one is that many companies will fail. If you think about the previous slide, effectively 96% of stocks didn't create any wealth. And then secondly, a few companies will compound. Very few companies will compound fast. And then finally, emotions do exist in markets. They've existed in all markets over all times, whether it's the tulip market or the spice market or the flower market in Cape Town. I mean, there's emotions, depending on whether it's Valentine's Day or who's been smoking what. So there will be emotions in markets, and these are the 3 things you need to harness. Okay, so if the emotions in markets, just buy cheap companies. That could work. If you want to buy growth stocks like a Capitec, a Microsoft, or Apple that I've mentioned, just buy the growth companies. But now the problem is the first one, many companies will fail. If you're buying cheap companies, often they're cheap for a reason. And if you're buying companies that are growing fast, often industries that are growing quickly attract capital, and the profits get competed away. The first one is called a value trap. There's a trap, there's a reason why it's cheap. The second one is mirage-like. You never actually make that money. It's always there. You always think, I'm going to be compounding soon, but the profits keep under-delivering, and that's because it's being competed away. So what we try and do is provide for this. You can harness these strengths, but you actually need a process that harnesses it. You can't just buy cheap companies, and you can't just buy growing companies. So we first try to find companies that we want to own, companies that are robust, companies that we think will not fail. When we find those companies, we can then express our views through those companies. That means that if emotions exist in markets and you're buying out-of-favor companies, find companies that are actually going to survive and then buy them when they're out of favor. Don't just buy companies that are out of favor. It's a completely different odds of success. If you have a portfolio of good companies and some are attractively priced, but they will survive whatever challenge they're going through. It's very different to where some won't survive. And you're probably going to keep buying more of the ones that fall, and that is a value trap. So if you find companies that are growing fast, then be very sure about the competitive advantage and be very sure that they're reinvesting in that competitive advantage. BlackBerry was ahead of Apple at a point, and Apple absolutely killed them. And that was because Apple kept reinvesting in the competitive advantage. Fantastic, strong growth vector, multi-decade, a lot of money to be made. And BlackBerry blew it because they tried to just push the same product over and over, but they had to actually reinvest. So to really get those true long-term compounders, there must be a competitive advantage, and they need to reinvest in that competitive advantage. The Microsoft we buy today is not the same Microsoft that you bought in 2002. Not at all. It's a completely different business. But they kept reinvesting on the growth vector, which is effectively enabling individuals and businesses by means of software. These are the people. It's our investment team. It's a small team. We've got a broad skill set, even though it's a small team, which means we've got people with a lot of experience in bonds and in property and in domestic equities and in global equities. That's not important. What's important is that we talk to each other quite a lot. We talk to each other all the time. And when you've got a small group of people who talk to each other a lot, there's tremendous benefits in it. My colleague here, he's a nature conservationist. He tells me trees talk to each other. So trees can tell each other there's a drought coming, there are insects coming, and do whatever they need to do to survive. And trees have been pretty good against the evolutionary onslaught. We think exactly the same is true for investment teams. If you talk a lot, you know how to optimize, where to focus. What goes into the portfolio is the result of very robust debate. And if you have too many people talking, well, then it's quite hard to listen. So we think this is a very well-resourced team. And when we do what we do, it makes us very, very happy. Thank you.